Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if half-demon Naruto built the ultimate harem with Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Anko, Ayame, Tsume. Part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Sakura had imagined multiple scenarios for her first mission outside of the village as she and the rest of Team 7, minus Naruto, approached the main gates with Tazuna in tow. Experiencing life outside of the village. Meeting new and interesting people. Romantic time alone with her Sasuke-kun, and maybe even sharing a kiss with her obsession. What she wasn't expecting was to come across her blonde teammate being pinned against the wooden post of the main gate, with his mouth being assaulted by a woman with purple hair and a fan ponytail. Dressed in a tan trench coat and a full-body mesh outfit, that miraculously covered her lady bits. The entire scene made her blush at the intimacy the two were showing. Anko, what are you doing here? Kakashi asked in an annoyed tone. That's Anko, Sakura mentally asked in shock, as she looked over the woman who had now broken her kiss from the blonde and was glaring at Kakashi. She looks hot. Inner stated as her outer self looked over the woman. I don't know who I should be more jealous of. Naruto-kun for kissing her, or her for kissing Naruto-kun. Damn it, Inner, we're straight and we love Sasuke-kun. The cherry blossom ranted in her mind. I don't care what you think. If we're straight, then why were you curious about kissing Ino? Inner smirked as she brought up long-forgotten memories from before she had ruined her friendship with the blonde girl. Sakura could only blush at the memory. While she claimed her first kiss would belong to Sasuke, in reality she had already had her first kiss with her best friend at the time nearly 4 years ago. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing that both girls had tried and had left both of them confused. For her part, Sakura didn't hate it and as such, didn't know what to do afterwards. I am here to see my mate off. Anko grinned as she held Naruto close to her body, allowing him to feel her assets as she pressed her chest into his, causing the teen boy to smirk at her antics. After all, he is going to be gone for so long. Naruto could only snicker as his hubby Harem fake pouted. Your mate? Kakashi inquired, confused with her wording. It's exactly as it sounds, Tata-sensei. Naruto smirked, earning a glare from the masked Jonin. He was really starting to hate that nickname the blonde had labeled him with. You really need to up your standards, Anko. The silver-haired man stated, with a tone of disappointment. Let me guess, you would prefer if I were with Duck as over there. Anko scoffed as she gestured towards where Sasuke was. PFF'd, like I would want some weak whore. The emo grunted before he felt a sting on his left cheek. Before anyone could react, Anko had skillfully thrown a kunai at high speed, just grazing the raven-haired boy's cheek, drawing a line of blood before she disappeared and appeared behind Sasuke with a second kunai to his neck, a sadistic smile on her face before she leaned in. You ought to show more respect to those around you. She whispered. Normally, she would lick the blood to induce more fear, but felt the Uchiha's blood may be as spoiled as him and get her sick. As it is, I already see over a dozen different ways to kill you right here. All of them extremely painful. Despite himself, Sasuke shivered in fear of the woman's words. Do not threaten my student, Anko. Kakashi glared at the snake mistress as he approached to defend his prized student. Oh, that's right, this one here is your special one, isn't he? The purple-haired woman mocked, though stepped away nonetheless. Moving back over to where Naruto was, embracing him once more. Tell me, have you two flipped sticks yet? Who's the top and who's the bottom? Naruto couldn't hold it in as he burst out laughing at his mate's implications of both Sasuke and Kakashi. Sakura seemed to have caught on as well, and formed a severe blush as her inner self ran wild with mental images of the Cyclops and the emo in compromising positions. This of course prevented her from defending her love. As both Kakashi and Sasuke bristled at the comments, Anko turned around and faced Naruto once more, bringing him in close. Jashin-sama watch over you. She whispered into his ear. And may she watch over you as well, hubby Haim. He replied in a whisper as well, before kissing her deeply once more. Breaking it off and separating from her, gazing into her eyes one last time before the snake mistress used her shunshin to head to meet up with her friends at the local dango stand. That's so romantic. Inner Sakura gushed as she watched the scene play out between Naruto and Anko. How is that romantic? Sakura mentally inquired. All she did was dry hump Naruto and accuse Sasuke-kun of being gay. Girl, you need to open your eyes. Inner groaned at her outer self's ignorance. Why did she have to get stuck being the dormant personality? Look at the way they look at each other. There is nothing but love in those eyes. Go ahead and tell me you don't want anyone to look at you the same way. Even Naruto-kun. The pinkett couldn't reply to her inner self. Because she was right, she would love it if someone were to look at her the same way she saw Naruto and Anko look at each other. It kind of made her jealous the more she thought of how perfect of a relationship the two seemed to have. While all she got was insults and rejection of her object of desire. A wave of sadness washed over her, causing her to frown. For the first time in 4 years, she was doubting her feelings over the raven-haired boy. Well, guess we should be off then. Naruto stated, snapping Sakura out of her train of thoughts. Naruto, Kakashi began, where is your travel pack? I got everything I need right here. The blonde replied, opening his trench coat, exposing a few scrolls secured in their slots. Kakashi only frowned as he saw the scrolls. Sealing items into scrolls was a level 3 Fuinjutsu ability. There was no way that the blonde had the patience or intelligence to learn such advanced techniques. I told you about lying, Naruto. The Jonin sighed as he produced a spare backpack and tossed it to Naruto. Only for the blonde to toss it right back. I told you, I have everything I need. The teen replied before turning on his heel and began walking out the gate. Meanwhile, Tazuna was beginning to wonder if he should request a different team. The bridge builder didn't need to be sober to see there was a rift in the team due to the favoritism the man had witnessed. With a sigh, he took another swig from his sake bottom and followed after the blonde teen as the rest of Team 7 trailed behind. This is going to be a long mission. Kakashi thought to himself with a silent sigh as he took out his favorite orange book and began reading, letting out a few perverted giggles. With Anko, it hadn't even been half an hour, and already the snake mistress was missing her mate something fierce. Letting out a sigh, she entered the dango stand to see Yugao and Kurenai waiting for her. She could only imagine how her future sister-wife felt, since she couldn't be openly affectionate with their mate. Walking by the purple-haired Anbu, Anko gave her a comforting rub on the back before taking her seat on the other side of Kurenai, whom didn't look to be in such a good mood. What's got you down? The red-eyed beauty asked, not used to seeing her usual loud and boisterous friend be so quiet and subdued. It's the first time he will be away from her for so long. Yugao supplied, earning a curious look from the genjutsu mistress. Kurenai recalled that Anko was seeing someone, however she couldn't recall who she was seeing. Of course at the time she was wrapped up in her own relationship that she thought was perfect. Until recently, that is. Him, Kurenai asked. Her mate, lover, fiancé. Whatever you want to call him. Yugao chuckled at her friend's cluelessness. I know that. The red-eyed woman snapped. Who is he? What's his name? Naruto. Anko smiled, as she gazed into nothingness, causing Yugao to chuckle a little. Wait, Naruto. Kurenai exclaimed. As in Genin Naruto Uzumaki. The one and only. The snake mistress giggled. Isn't he a little too young for you? I am only 6 years older than him. Anko replied. Besides, the moment he put on his forehead protector, he became an adult in the eyes of the village. Kurenai could only shake her head in response at the sudden dump of information on her. However, this caused her to frown slightly as she recalled what had happened a few days ago between Kiba and Hinata. Something wrong? Yugao asked, noticing the genjutsu mistress's expression. No, I could have sworn that Hinata was dating Naruto. She answered honestly. Why did you think that? Anko asked. It wasn't like Naruto and I really hid that we were together. Hell, I'm surprised you didn't know. Well, a few days ago there was an incident between Kiba and Hinata during one of our team meetings. Kurenai sighed as she remembered the events. I swear, that Inuzuka boy doesn't understand the word no. Anyways, Kiba continued to insist that Hinata date him, going on about him being an alpha. Finally she had enough and laid the boy out on the ground and told him that she only had eyes for Naruto. Both Yugao and Anko couldn't help but snicker as they imagined the Dark Princess, as Hinata had been dubbed by them, laying out the poor boy. Mainly because the boy had rubbed them both the wrong way with his constant bragging of being an alpha and that all girls or women should feel honored to be with him. Hell, just slap the Uchiha name on him and he would fit in perfectly with their arrogance. Well, they are close. Anko cryptically replied. Though she didn't miss Yugao stifling a giggle that threatened to come out, though skillfully covered it with a cough. A lot of the times she will go over to his apartment or mine, depending on where he is to hang out. And you're not worried about that? Kurenai frowned, looking to Anko whom only shook her head. Nope. There are no secrets between Naruto-kun and I. She smiled again. Well ladies, I have to report for my shift in the Hokage's office. The purple-haired Anbu stated as she got up from her seat. I'll catch you girls later. With that, Yugao shunshine to the Hokage's office, leaving the two friends to talk. Alright Nai-chan, spill it. Anko stated, catching her friend off guard. What's bothering you? What do you mean? Well, you've never been this interested in other people's relationships before. The snake mistress pointed out. Also, you're being suspicious of Hinata and Naruto hanging out together, after you learned that he and I are dating. The red-eyed beauty sighed in defeat. Knowing that Anko wasn't going to let this go. It's that bastard Asuma. She gritted out. What did he do this time? Bastard's been cheating on me for pretty much the entire time we were together. Kurenai hissed, her blood beginning to boil at the betrayal. Hell, I don't even know if she's the other girl or if I am. Anko could only growl at this. Being one to take loyalty very seriously, especially since she had been abandoned by that snake bastard all those years ago. Glancing over, she could see her friend was even more upset than she was, and for very good reason. When I confronted him about it, he had the audacity to tell me it was because he was tired of waiting for me. The Genjutsu mistress continued. No shame, no remorse. Just flat out told me that because I wouldn't spread my legs for him when he wanted, he was getting it from someone else. Please tell me you put him under some sort of genjutsu for that shit. Kurenai shook her head in response. It wouldn't have helped and would have only made things worse for me. What with him being the son of the Hokage and all. So he pulls that bullshit, huh? Anko asked, clearly disgusted. Hides behind daddy's title. The red-eyed mistress nodded once more. I don't know Anko. Kurenai sighed, putting her head down on the counter. Maybe if I would have just. No. The snake mistress hissed. Stop that line of thinking right there. If that bastard couldn't wait for you to be ready, then he never loved you to begin with. The black-haired woman looked up at her friend, whose eyes were full of fury currently. Trust me Nai-chan. Anko continued. Something as precious as that, you want to give it to someone who will love you back and respect your wishes. Not guilt you into having sex just to satisfy their own selfish desires. Anko. Kurenai asked, not used to seeing the snake mistress impart this kind of advice. In the past her friend would just wave off such topics and tell people to do what had them happy. You're talking from experience, aren't you? Anko could only blush in response as memories of her and Naruto's first time flooded her mind. Oh my Kami. The red-eyed mistress blushed at the implications. You already did it with Naruto. Yeah. Anko chuckled while scratching the back of her head sheepishly. For the record, he was the one who wanted to wait until he graduated. Mostly to avoid legal ramifications. I was the one who wanted to jump his bones after he hit puberty. Kurenai could only look on, dumbfounded by her friend. But I don't regret waiting. The snake mistress smiled. I love him that much. And I will say, it was well worth the wait. When we finally did it, he was caring and sensitive, making sure that I was comfortable and that we moved at my pace. The genjutsu mistress couldn't help but feel a little jealous of her friend. To have found someone, even if he was a little young in her eyes, that was that considerate for his partner. Something she wished she would find in someone someday. Careful, Anko. Kurenai smirked playfully. Keep bragging about him like that and I may have to seduce him myself. Only if I can join in. Anko quipped back without missing a beat. The red-eyed beauty only blushed in response as her more perverted imagination began running wild, flooding her mind with steamy images of both her and Anko pleasuring the young teen. Some of which were quite vivid. Team 7. 3 days later. It had been 3 days since Team 7 and Tazuna had departed Konoha. For the most part, things were quiet and calm between them, with Sakura striking up a conversation with the old bridge builder about how life in Nami no Kuni was. Of course, this was only after she had tried, and failed multiple times to get Sasuke to talk to her. As expected, Kakashi still had his nose in his favorite orange book as he followed behind his team, letting out a perverted giggle every once in a while when a scene would strike his fancy. It was a mystery to the team how he had not yet finished the book, with the amount of time he had his nose in it. Meanwhile, Naruto was jotting down something in a small notebook he had while he walked in the middle of the group, with Sasuke, Sakura, and the old bridge building just ahead of him, whilst Kakashi brought up the rear. So the hero finally finds the Demon Queen and Naruto thought over how to continue his book series he had been writing. Finds that the Demon Queen doesn't want to fight and wants to end the war between demons and humans. Ari chimed in with a slight blush. It didn't go unnoticed to the Kitsune girl that the parallels between the hero and the Demon Queen of his story mirrored their own experiences, though with some creative liberty. I like that idea, Ari-chan. The Hanyu mentally replied before scribbling down some notes. What many didn't know, aside from his girls, was that Naruto was an accomplished author with his own book series titled Demon Heart that were bestsellers, even outselling the Ika Ika Paradise novels in many stores. Now, he didn't use his real name as he knew no publisher in Konoha would publish his stories if they knew it was the demon brat that had penned these tales. No, he used the alias of Nu Kitsune. The plot of the books was very close to home for the young Hanyu, with some minor changes. For one, he had the setting set in a fantasy-style world filled with mythical creatures, as well as knights, kings and queens, far removed from the shinobi world he lived in. Secondly, he divided the world into two sides, one of darkness and one of light, but gave both sides something the other wanted. The light world, as he called it, had fertile soil, bountiful crops, and livestock, whereas the dark world had precious metals, gems, and stones. Both had something the other wanted and needed, which lead to the constant conflicts between the human race of light world and the demons of dark world. As Ari had expected, he modeled the main hero after himself, giving him a tragic backstory and everything, and modeled the demon queen after Ari herself, with a dashing of Anko as well, giving her a similar backstory. Two tormented souls that would connect to heal each other, and maybe even the world. His chakra rippled, breaking him from his thoughts and prompting him to put his notebook away and look to the road. Noticing two decent-sized water puddles, he narrowed his eyes in suspicion. It hasn't rained recently, right? Not in over 2 weeks. Naruto looked to those in front of him. To his surprise, he could see Sakura had gone quiet, eyeing the puddles as well, before turning her head to look at him. Giving her a nod that he also suspected a trap of some kind, he turned his attention to the Uchiha, whom wasn't even paying attention and had his eyes on his feet. Naruto didn't need to look back to see if Kakashi assumed anything. He had hoped that the masked Jonin would have sensed something as simple as the genjutsu before them. Sighing, he figured the only thing left to do was spring the trap and see who they were after. Though Naruto already had his suspicions, eyeing the bridge builder. The group was a little past 10 feet when the ambush happened. Two masked figures jumped out of the puddles and wrapped a chain around Kakashi before he could react and tore him to pieces, prompting Sakura to scream in horror at seeing her sensei get killed. Despite himself, Sasuke froze upon seeing Kakashi die, before he produced a shuriken and kunai. Throwing them both and lodging the chain the two assassins used into a tree, forcing the two to disconnect themselves from it. Not wasting time exchanging words, the two would-be assassins launched their attack. With one launching himself at Naruto, who stood ready with a black sword-like weapon in his hand. The blonde Hanyu effortlessly blocked the attack, before looking to see where the other attacker was, only to see him leaping over the Uchiha, kicking the emo in the back, before Sasuke could react and sending him to the ground, before the attacker launched himself at Sakura and the bridge builder. Damn worthless Uchiha, Naruto cursed to himself, pissed by the fact that Sasuke was taken out so easily. Parrying the strike away, Naruto used the dark blade to slash deeply into the side of his attacker before bringing the pommel end of his sword up to connecting it harshly to the mont's head, effectively knocking him out. Without hesitation, he turned and used Kawarimi to replace himself with Sakura, before it was too late, effectively blocking the strike with his blade. That's the second time he has done that to protect you, you know. Inner pointed out as Sakura stared in disbelief with a slight blush as Naruto paired off with the second attacker, before she heard a groan in pain from behind her. Turning, she saw the first attacker beginning to stir slightly. Not wasting any time, she kicked him in the face, knocking him out once more before producing some ninja wire and securing the prisoner. By the time Sasuke got back to his feet, Naruto had already subdued the second attacker and had moved him over to his accomplice and tied them both up together. Much to the last Uchiha's ire, as the raven-haired emo glared at the blonde Hanyu. How dare that clanless loser humiliate me like this and make me look weak? Sasuke mentally seethed. Now that that's settled, Naruto commented before looking to the forest line. You can come out now, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto, what do you mean? Sakura sobbed. Kakashi-sensei is dead. Naruto didn't reply and instead gestured towards the location their sensei supposedly died in, revealing only shredded pieces of wood from a log the masked Jonin had replaced himself with, causing Sakura's eyes to widen in realization. You didn't think he would be that easy to kill, did you? Very good team, came Kakashi's voice as he stepped back onto the road from his hiding spot. This caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow as the man never complimented them as a team. He always found something to stroke the Uchiha's ego. Even Sakura gave the masked Jonin a confused look. Now to see who these two are. The cycloptic Jonin stated as he pulled out a second book, much to the surprise of his team of genin. Gozu and Maizu, missing Nin from Kurigakure. Known as the Demon Brothers. Have any past run-ins with these two, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked. Nope. The man lazily replied. This is the first time we've met. Which means, Sakura said looking to the elder bridge builder who was now sweating up a storm. Kakashi seemed to have the same idea as he walked over to Tazuna and stared down at the elder man, making the poor man sweat even more. Knowing full well that he wasn't entirely truthful in what was really happening in his home country. Now, Tazuna-san, the masked Jonin began, eerily calm. You are going to tell me everything and why you lied about what this mission entailed. With a heavy sigh, the old man explained everything. From Gato moving his business into the country and beginning to strangle the entire country for more money. Leaving many family business bankrupt or very close to it. The way he had women kidnapped to entertain his men and to be sold off as ex-slaves. The bridge builder was silently thankful that they hadn't turned their eyes towards his own daughter yet, but he knew they would eventually. I see. Kakashi sighed. Due to the client misleading us about the nature of the mission, protocol dictates that we turn back in. No, we push forward. Sasuke interrupted. I am an Uchiha. I will not run away like a weak coward because of some stupid, scared old man. Once I unlock my Sharingan, I will be unstoppable and be one step closer to fulfilling my ambition. Well, the masked Jonin sighed once more, looking to his other two students. What do you two think? I only agree with Duck SS that we should move forward and help these people. Naruto replied. Besides, this scenario is a double-edged sword. If we abandon our client, it will set a bad precedent for the village. But if we complete this mission, it will increase the village's reputation among other potential clients. And you, Sakura, the silver-haired sensei turned his attention to the pink-haired girl. I agree with Naruto. She stated, earning a raised eyebrow from the masked Jonin. Normally she would agree with Sasuke, not Naruto. Though then again, the man couldn't deny that Naruto had made a much better case than the Uchiha did. Very well, Kakashi stated. We will continue on with the mission. However, Tazuna-san, be aware that you will have to pay the mission difference once we are done. The old bridge builder nodded his head in agreement as Kakashi set to work ensuring the two Kiri shinobi were firmly confined before summoning one of his dog summons to return them to Konoha for interrogation and to collect the bounty on the two. Inuzuka compound. The head of the Inuzuka clan watched as her daughter lounged under one of the large trees that dotted their compound, stroking the fur of one of her three ninkins that always accompanied her. Tsume could see the telltale signs. Hana Inuzuka had a crush on a boy. In fact, this was the first time she could recall her daughter ever being enamored with a boy. And Tsume had it on good authority who that particular boy is. Naruto Uzumaki. It wasn't hard since all week last week, her oldest pup would tell anyone who had the misfortune of being trapped by her about the blonde boy who had saved her ninkin. Much to the amusement of the clan head, and the aggravation of her youngest pup. Tsume frowned at Kiba's reaction when Hana had gushed about the boy. She knew her pup didn't view the blonde very kindly due to the Hyuga heiress's interest in the blonde, and now that his own sister was pinning for Naruto as well, just aggravated the young Inuzuka all the more. Tsume herself had no problems with the young blonde, as she had been very close friends with his mother before she passed away. If it wasn't for that damned civilian council, she would have adopted the pup years ago. The thought of those bastards made the feral woman's blood boil. She just knew that one of them, if not all of them, were behind the constant fox hunts the boy had to endure growing up. She did what she could to look out for the young blonde, but like the Hokage, she was extremely limited in what she could do for him. Though she was surprised to discover that the snake mistress herself, Anko, had entered a relationship with the boy. She wasn't sure how it happened, but she did see a strong bond between the two. She really didn't care about the age difference between the two. Hell, she was a solid 13 years older than Kiba's father before that sack of shit ran off. Still, if the boy her pup had a crush on was already in a relationship, it would cause heartbreak for her. As a mother, she could only wait and comfort her pup when the time came. She knew there was one way to avoid such heartbreak, depending on if the boy knew about his heritage. Still, she didn't like the concept of the Clan Restoration Act, as she had seen it go wrong all too many times. Where the women were merely treated as breeding stock, and little else. This also put her in a complicated position in the future. She knew the civilian council was already starting to push the Hokage into admitting the last Uchiha into the program. Her instincts screamed that the raven-haired boy would not respect any woman that was forced to be with him, and she knew that if Hana wasn't in a relationship by the time this happened, the bastards on the council would push to have her given to the spoiled brat. No, if her daughter was going to be in a relationship that revolved around the CRA, she preferred it being with Naruto. She saw how he treated the snake mistress with love and respect, and felt that he would no doubt treat any woman he was with the same way. The only question was, how would the Inuzuka clan head approach the blonde about his heritage? She decided that she would invite both Naruto and Anko over to talk to them about it, once the boy returned from his mission. In the meantime, she was content to sit back and watch how things unfolded. Besides, seeing Kiba fume over the blonde had been quite entertaining. With Team 7, 4 days after the Demon Brothers. Meanwhile, Naruto was having a sneeze attack, prompting everyone to look at him in questioning. Sorry. He sheepishly replied. Someone must be thinking about me. Pretty sure it's more than one thinking about you, Naruto-kun. Ari giggled. After the attack of the demon brothers, the group had been more aware of their surroundings. Not wanting to get caught off guard again, and now that they knew the truth of what was happening in Nami no Kuni, they were better prepared. Without warning, Sasuke had leapt forward and threw a kunai into some random bushes, causing everyone to look at the raven-haired boy. With a bored sigh, Naruto entered the bushes to see what had gotten the emo's attention. Seconds later, returning with a bloodied kunai and a white rabbit. Congratulations Sasuke, you found a rabbit. Naruto grinned, causing the raven-haired emo to scoff and a soft glare from Sakura. Why is the fur white? Kakashi thought to himself as he analyzed the rabbit the blonde had let go and ran off into the bushes once more. A whistling noise caught everyone's attention as a massive object came flying through the trees. Get down! Both Naruto and Kakashi exclaimed, with the blonde pulling down Sakura and the old man, whilst Kakashi tackled Sasuke to the ground, as the boy had yet to move from his position. Just in time to avoid being cut in half by the massive blade that arced over the group before embedding itself into a tree across from the group. Slowly, they stood up and eyed the figure that was crouched upon the embedded blade. A muscular topless male with bandages covering the man's mouth. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the hidden mist. Kakashi stated, recognizing the man from his bingo book. Raising his headband to reveal his lone Sharingan. Run! Kakashi shouted from the water prison he had managed to get himself trapped in. Take the client and get as far as you can. His water clones can't travel too far from himself. Yeah, except Zabuza's water clones move nearly as fast as him and would cut both Sasuke and Sakura down before they got 5 feet. Naruto mentally sighed. Though he did take heart that at least Kakashi cared about them enough to try and get them to safety. For now at least, knowing full well that once this was over it would be back to the same old crap of him king up to the Uchiha. Currently, the 3 genin were surrounding the old man to protect him, as mist rolled in around them, completely obscuring their vision. Sasuke was looking in every direction in panic as he searched for any signs of movement. It kind of reminded the blonde Hanyu of a bird, with the way the raven-haired emo kept jerking his head in each direction. Sakura for the most part faring a little better. She had a determined look on her face and was mostly using her eyes to search for any movement in the mist, instead of full head movements. Knowing full well it could cause blurriness to her vision. Still, she was scared nonetheless. Her only comfort that she would get out of this all right was Naruto, surprisingly. The blonde Hanyu on the other hand had remained impassive as he summoned a Tonto-sized black blade into his hand in a reversed grip position. Though no one could see due to the thick mist, the teen's eyes had changed from their normal cerulean blue to black, with a silver 4-point star design where his pupils were, as he had activated his shadow sight, allowing him to see perfectly through the mist and where everyone was through their life energy. Smirking some, as he even picked up traces of chakra in the mist, signifying where the water clones were. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys or heart. A deep voice echoed all around them in the mist. Which one do I choose? Without hesitating, Naruto spun around and thrust his black blade into the head of the large man that had appeared in the center of the group, just as he was lifting his massive blade to strike them down. Upon impact, the large man dispelled into a puddle of water, showing that it had been a water clone. If you're going to kill someone, just kill them. Don't just talk about it. The blonde Hanyu mentally scoffed, earning a giggle from Ari. Slowly, the mist began to recede, prompting Naruto to deactivate his shadow sight, allowing his eyes to return to their normal cerulean blue. Looking across, he could see that Kakashi was still trapped inside the water prison. Going to have to get him out of there. Naruto frowned. To be honest, the blonde was a little disappointed that their sensei had been captured so easily. Then again, he could mark it up as to overconfidence on the masked Jonin's part. Impressive Gaki, You killed one of my water clones. Zabuza stated in a mocking tone as he created another one to send towards the group. Though, you should listen to your sensei and run away like the weak pathetic cowards you are. Naruto saw through the Mon's ploy to agitate them into attacking. Sasuke however did not and began to charge forward in anger. Furious that someone would call him a coward. Sasuke. No. The blonde yelled, trying to at least save the duck butt from getting himself killed. I am an Uchiha, the arrogant boy shouted as he ran towards the water clone, kunai in hand. I am an elite and I am not a coward. Sasuke got within 3 feet of where the water clone was before receiving a brutal roundhouse kick to the stomach, causing the raven-haired emo to spit up blood and saliva and sending him flying back to where Sakura and Naruto were. Immediately, the pinkett dropped down to her knees to aid her precious Sasuke-kun, only to be pushed away by a disoriented Uchiha, who could barely find his feet to stand. Leave me alone. The boy grunted. I'm just trying to help you, Sasuke-kun. Sakura insisted, trying to get the boy to his feet, only to be pushed away once more, this time more roughly, causing the poor girl to stumble back slightly. I don't need the help of a weak and pathetic fangirl. He seethed, causing the poor pinkett to fight back the tears that were threatening to break free. Naruto only sighed and shook his head, before performing a single-hand seal to create 4 shadow clones to stay and watch over the old man and his 2 teammates. Keeping his black blade in a reverse grip position he stalked forward towards the water clone, as Sakura and Tazuna watched on. What are you doing, Naruto? Kakashi yelled from his water prison. You aren't strong enough to go up against his water clone. Just get Sasuke and the client out of here. You know we won't make it more than 20 feet before he catches up to us, right? Naruto pointed out, though narrowed his eyes slightly at the silver-haired Jonin, not mentioning getting Sakura to safety as well. So, our only chance is to get you out of there. Ignoring any further protest made by his Jonin sensei, Naruto continued forward, meeting the water clone head-on. As the water clone moved to slash at the young blonde, Naruto ducked under the blade, spinning around while slashing his own blade deep within the water clone, causing it to dispel into a puddle of water. Sakura could only watch on in awe as Naruto had effortlessly taken out the water clone, whilst Sasuke glared at the blonde, once again being outdone by the clanless loser. Meanwhile, inner Sakura was drooling at how strong the blonde was. Twirling his blade, so that it was in the forward position, Naruto thrust his sword arm out slightly, causing the blade to lengthen to the size of a proper katana sword. That's quite the technique you have there, Gaki. Zabuza genuinely complimented the blonde. Truly impressed with the concept of being able to summon forth a weapon. I wonder how durable it is. You will find that my Dakiburdo, dark blade, is quite durable. Naruto smirked, knowing full well his shadow blades were virtually indestructible. Good. Zabuza laughed as he propped his massive sword up with one hand, as if it were as light as a feather. Let's see just how good you think you are, Gaki. Naruto only grinned as he dropped into a very familiar stance to Kakashi, causing the masked Jonin to widen his eyes in recognition. How does Naruto know that style? The silver-haired man thought to himself with a slight scowl, thinking that the young blonde had stolen the technique. That is Azuki's moon dance style. Would be foolish to try and block his blade, even though I do have the strength to do so. No need to reveal my true power so soon. Naruto thought to himself, with Ari nodding in agreement. Knowing that he only had a few minutes tops, to get Kakashi out of the water prison before he ran out of air, Naruto kicked off the ground and shot forward with surprising speed. Nearly catching the Kurigakure shinobi off guard with how quick the young blonde had closed the distance between the two. Hefting his massive sword up, Zabuza performed a powerful swing with his left arm, aiming to bifurcate the young teen in one blow. However, Naruto had anticipated this, and at the last second the blonde Hanyu dropped and skidded on his knees under the blade, allowing it to pass harmlessly above him. Twisting as he slid, Naruto prepared his own attack and slashed upwards at the right arm that was holding the water prison. Zabuza's eyes widened in realization of what had happened and quickly released the water prison to save his hand, avoiding it from being cut off. Jumping back, the Kurigakure missing nin could only stare at the blonde in pure shock of how effortlessly he had made it look to get him to disengage the water prison. Not bad, Gaki. The Kurigakure nin stated with a chuckle. Question is, was that skill or just luck? Let's find out, shall we? The blonde grinned. Both swordsmen readied their blades before charging towards each other and began to trade blows with one another. Rather than full-on blocking, Naruto would use his blade to deflect the much larger sword away from him before moving in close and delivering a few solid kicks to Zabuza's body before retreating back out of range. This Gaki is smart, Zabuza thought to himself as he continued to trade blows with the blonde Hanyu. Deflects my blade away and gets inside for some quick shots before jumping back out of range. Kid shows a lot of potential. The two trade more blows over the next few minutes, though not following the same pattern as Zabuza began to guard his insides a bit more to prevent Naruto from getting in a few hits. Though the blonde Hanyu still managed to sneak a few good kicks or punches into the larger Mon's ribs, fairly certain that he had cracked a few of them. As the two once more charged for a third exchange, Kakashi jumped in the center and blocked Zabuza's blade with his kunai, his Sharingan spinning furiously at the Kiri missing nin. Your fight is with me. Kakashi stated. Naruto, get back with the team. We'll talk about this later. Looks like Tsume is upset. Naruto chuckled, though spitting out the word Tsume with venom. Guess we'll have to play later, Zabuza-san. Jumping back, Naruto rejoined the others, allowing his blade to dissipate. He ignored the glare from the Uchiha, as he retook his position beside the elder bridge builder, dispelling his clones as he did so. Sakura could only stare at the blonde in pure shock and awe. Still trying to wrap her head around what she had just witnessed. Naruto, a fresh genin from the academy, had just gone toe-to-toe with an enemy that gave her Jonin-sensei a hard time. What's the matter, Kakashi? Zabuza mocked the masked Jonin. Jealous that the kid was giving me a better fight than you did. Kakashi didn't bother replying, instead jumping back and doing a series of hand seals. Sweden no jutsu. Water release. Water bullet technique. The masked Jonin shouted, shooting a powerful torrent of water aimed towards Zabuza. Anticipating the attack, the Kurigakure shinobi jumped out of the way, avoiding the torrent of raging water as it ripped through a tree with enough force to cut it in half. Though Zabuza was a bit curious as to how Kakashi was able to perform the jutsu with that face mask on. Stopping off to the side of the silver-haired Jonin, Zabuza began to go through a large series of hand seals. However, he was shocked to see Kakashi mirroring each one perfectly and at the same time as him. Both finishing at the exact same time. Suryuden no jutsu. Water release. Water dragon technique, both exclaimed at the same time. Immediately, two large forms of water began to take shape into what appeared to be leviathan-like dragons. Each intertwining with one another before they bit into each other's bodies. Fighting for dominance, but only to come out equally matched as both bodies began to lose their form. Something's not right, thought Zabuza. He's copying my every movement. But how? It's almost as if he can read your mind, the silver-haired Jonin stated, causing the missing nin to widen his eyes in shock. Once more, both began going through a series of hand seals. With once again, Kakashi mirroring it perfectly. However, Zabuza hesitates, as he swears he sees an image of himself behind the masked Jonin. In that moment, Kakashi finished the last hand seal. Suryuden no jutsu, water release, great waterfall technique. The silver-haired Jonin exclaimed, sending a furious torrent of water into Zabuza, hitting him directly. The Kurigakure missing nin was at the mercy of the rapids as the waters slammed him into a tree with massive force, knocking the wind out of him. Before he could recover, a series of kunai struck his arms and legs, causing him to grunt out in pain. How? The man breathed out. Can you see the future? I foresee your death, Kakashi declared as he moved to deliver the finishing blow. However, before he could close the distance, two Senbon needles penetrated Zabuza's neck completely. The man couldn't even react before he fell to the ground, unmoving. Foo foo foo, it looks like your prediction did come true. A voice sounded from the tree across from where Kakashi was, alerting everyone to the presence of the masked figure that had just shown up. Who are you? Kakashi asked, not taking his eyes off the masked individual. I am a hunter nin from Kurigakure, tasked with killing Zabuza there. The individual stated, I must thank you for weakening him. He has been a most troublesome prey. I see. The silver-haired Jonin stated as he covered his Sharingan eye once more with his Hite 8. Seeing this as their opening, the hunter nin jumped down and moved towards the body of Zabuza. Grasping the corpse firmly, without another word, the masked figure disappeared in a shunshin with the body of Zabuza. Well, now we should. Kakashi never got to finish as he fell over and would have hit the ground had Naruto not rushed forward and caught him. Taking note of his sensei's vitals, he let out a sigh of relief before turning back to the rest of his team. Chakra exhaustion, the blonde explained. How far is your home, Tazuna-san? About a mile up the road. The elder bridge builder answered. Nodding, Naruto hoisted his sensei over his shoulders and joined the others as they continued on their way. Tazuna in front, and surprisingly, Sakura was walking beside Naruto. Though she didn't speak, the Hanyu could feel a range of emotions flowing through her. Relief being the most prominent among them. Though the blonde did pick up hints of anger and resentment. At the back of the group was the resident emo himself, all the while glaring at the back of his blonde teammate. I don't know how he got so strong. Sasuke seethed. But I will find out what it is, and I will demand that he trains me in that power. Hatake will help me. He always gives me what I want. Then, I will be able to kill Itachi. 1 hour later. An hour had passed since the confrontation with Zabuza and the mysterious hunter nin before the group arrived at a quaint-looking home on the water's edge. Complete with a small fishing dock. As the group approached, the door opened, revealing a slender dark blue-haired woman roughly the age of 24. Naruto noted that she was wearing a pink blouse with red accents along the neck and arms. A dark blue dress to complete her outfit. A single silver chain necklace adorning her neck. Though one thing that stood out to the blonde Hanyu was the red cloth she had wrapped around her left forearm. Though it was old, he could still smell trace amounts of blood from it. "Tu-san," the woman cried happily. "You're home." "That I am, Tsunami-chan." The old man smiled. "And I brought help." The woman now identified as Tsunami looked over the group before she laid her eyes on Naruto, allowing them to linger for a moment as she took in his details. She could see something was embroidered on his jacket, though she couldn't quite make it out due to the body of the team's sensei blocking it from view. Bowing, she thanked them for protecting her father, and coming to help. "You're very welcome, Tsunami-san." Naruto replied. "Do you have a room where our sensei can rest? He kind of overexerted himself and needs a good night's rest." "Of course, follow me please," she answered with a smile. Leading them into the house, she directed Naruto to a room at the top of the stairs that was vacant, only furnished with a few futons. Tsunami held the door open as the Konoha shinobi filed in. Gently, Naruto laid the masked Jonin down on one of the free futons, finally allowing the woman to see the kanji written on the back of his trench coat, causing her eyes to widen at the realization. Shadow Fox. Once more, Tsunami allowed her eyes to linger on the blonde, as anticipation and excitement bubbled up inside of her. It is just as Jashin-sama said. She eagerly thought. Soon, we shall be sheltered by the shadow of the fox. If there is anything you need, let me know. She finally spoke, before departing the room. A smile on her face. She desperately wanted to get the blonde alone so she could talk to him, and hopefully confirm what she thought. Even though she knew it to be true. It couldn't be a coincidence that this young man would arrive with such a peculiar kanji on the back of his jacket, mirroring her goddess's words. Once the woman left, Kakashi opened his eyes, revealing he had been faking being asleep the entire time. Slowly, he looked over each of his students. So what's the plan, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. With Zabuza, this mission has easily gone from AC rank to an A- rank. Kakashi sighed. But Zabuza is dead, right? Sakura pointed out. That hunter nin killed him and took the body. Not really, since that hunter nin had watched our entire fight. Naruto thought to himself. No doubt that they are working with Zabuza, and by extension, this Gato guy. Question is, why though? Tell me, Sakura, what do hunter nins do when they kill their target? The silver Jonin inquired. The Pinkett thought to herself for a moment, before answering. They dispose of the body on the spot. And yet this one takes the body. The blonde added, making sure everyone was on the same page. So their Zabuza could still be alive then. Sasuke smirked. Good, he caught me off guard last time. Next time, I will show him why I am an elite. Naruto, and surprisingly Sakura, could only arch an eyebrow at the delusional Uchiha. So far, his title of being an elite has not been going well. He couldn't defeat one of the demon brothers, and he got flattened by Zabuza who wasn't even trying. Due to the change of mission parameters, we should request backup from Konoha to be safe. Naruto suggested, ignoring the glare the Uchiha sent his way. I would recommend asking for Team 8 or Neko, if she is free. Why them, Naruto? Sakura asked. Simple, Team 8 is a tracking team. Their tracking abilities would come in handy to ensure we don't get caught off guard. The blonde stated. As for Neko, she is a highly skilled Anbu and would be a great assistance against Zabuza. Not to mention both of them could be here in seconds with their shadow step ability. Naruto thought to himself. Though, I expect it would be a bit of a shock for the rest of Team 8 to travel like that. PFF'd. I don't need any backup. The raven-haired boy exclaimed. Once I unlock my Sharingan, I will kill Zabuza and his little helper myself. So what do we do, Kakashi-sensei? The Pinkett asked. For now, we rest. Kakashi stated. Tomorrow we will begin training for our next encounter with Zabuza and the masked shinobi that was with him. So you're not going to request reinforcements? The blonde asked, with a hint of disappointment in his voice. Mostly in his supposed sensei for being so short-sighted and endanger them further just to stoke the Uchiha's ego. We don't need it, the man stated. Sasuke, Sakura, you two are dismissed. I need to have a talk with Naruto. The blonde mentally scoffed, as he already knew what was about to happen. He waited for both his teammates to leave before shutting the door and awaited the lazy Jonin to start. Naruto, you were reckless when you ignored my orders and attacked Zabuza. Kakashi began, narrowing his eyes at the blonde whom merely shrugged. Not to mention, stealing techniques from other shinobi from the village. I assume you're talking about my use of the moon dance style. Naruto CC'd an eyebrow. For your information, I haven't stolen anything. I am not an Uchiha, I don't need to steal, Hitaki. The Uchiha comment caused the silver-haired Jonin to narrow his eyes at the boy. Though he did flinch slightly at the teen's use of his last name, rather than his title or even nickname that the blonde had dubbed him with. So if you didn't steal it, then how do you know it? How does anyone know how to do something, Hitaki? Naruto stated with annoyance. They are taught. Neko, or should I say, Yugao-chan taught me her style when I sought her out for training with swords. Kakashi's eyes widened upon hearing that Naruto knew Neko's identity. You know it is looked down upon to have another train you when you already have a sensei. The silver-haired man stated, shaking off his earlier shock. Once again, you assume I am learning from her now. The blonde sighed. Truth is, I finished up my apprenticeship under Yugao-chan just before graduation. The only extra training I get now is from Anko-chan. And as her and I are engaged, she is free to teach me anything she wants. And Jashin-chan, Naruto mentally added, with a sly grin. Now, If you're done singling me out and accusing me of various other bullshit, I am going to go rest for tomorrow's training. When Kakashi didn't reply, Naruto left the room, closing the door behind him softly. As he headed downstairs, he was approached by Sakura of all people. What did Kakashi-sensei want? She inquired. Oh, he just wanted to thank me for saving him from the water prison he was in. Are you sure you were talking to Kakashi-sensei and not an imposter? Sakura cocked an eyebrow, earning a small chuckle from the blonde. No, he wanted to ask how I know how to use swords and the style I was using. What was that style anyways? The pink kid asked. It looked beautiful. It's called the moon dance style. Naruto answered. It relies on natural flexibility and evasion instead of powerful strikes and blocking. Are you okay? He asked, after a moment of silence passed between the two. While they were civil towards each other, the pink kid never attempted to carry out a conversation this long before. He had a suspicion as to why she was being more social with him. All surrounding a certain Uchiha and his recent actions. Whom suspiciously, wasn't around. Yeah, Sakura sighed before continuing. I'm just frustrated that I try to help Sasuke, and he only pushes me away and insults me. Naruto could see tears starting to form around the pink kid's eyes. He knew that she was hurting on the inside from what had transpired a few hours ago. It was evident as the usual, Kun, was missing from the Uchiha's name. Gently reaching up, he wiped away the tears that were starting to form. Sakura was shocked by this gesture as she gazed up at the blonde who was looking into her eyes. At the close proximity, she couldn't help but blush. Kiss him, kiss him, kiss him. Inner Sakura chanted, causing the pink kid to blush even more. I know you're in love with him. He gently spoke, breaking her out of her trance-like state. But unfortunately, you can't help those that don't want help. And to be honest, I don't think Sasuke will ever accept anyone's help. Currently, it seems all he cares about is himself and what others can give him. Sakura could only nod her head in acknowledgement. As much as she wanted to, she just couldn't bring herself to defend her love. Mostly because she knew that her blonde teammate wasn't trying to insult Sasuke. He was merely speaking the truth. Feeling he had comforted his teammate enough, Naruto stepped back and began to depart the house. Sakura couldn't help but feel cold at his sudden absence, no longer being comforted by his warmth. Looking up, she saw as he approached the door. What are you going to do, Naruto? I am going to scout around and see what's going on. He replied. You get some rest, you look tired. With that, he left the house to scout the perimeter of the home before heading off into the town area. Leaving the pink kid alone to digest his words and struggle with her own rising feelings towards the blonde Hanyu. Unknown location, Nami no Kuni. The light from the room's lone lantern flickered, as it cast the shadows of a lone individual leaning over what appeared to be a makeshift bed. Currently occupied by a prone muscular man with 2 needles lodged in his neck. As the standing individual leaned down to gently remove the foreign objects, the muscular man shot his hand up to stop the person. Reaching up, he brutally ripped the 2 needles from his neck. Gently please, Zabuza-sama. The masked individual stated, clearly worried about the larger man. If you pull those out any which way, you really will kill yourself. How long are you going to keep that ghoulish mask on? The larger man grunted. Taking the hint, the masked individual unclasped their mask and removed it. Allowing the lights from the lantern to bounce off of her smooth, almost perfect skin, with her jet black hair framing her face. Her chocolate brown eyes full of concern for the larger male. How are you feeling, Zabuza-sama? She asked. Zabuza was silent for a handful of seconds as he mentally recounted his fight with the Konoha shinobi. He was upset at himself for falling for Kakashi's mind games that gave the silver-haired shinobi the edge in their battle. I shouldn't have let myself fall for that Konoha scum's mind game, Haku. He replied, narrowing his eyes slightly. However, that blonde Gaki. He interests me. He is no older than I am, and yet it seemed he was very skilled with that ability of his. Haku commented. Even more, I have a feeling he was holding back. The larger man speculated, as he laid back down in the bed. I look forward to fighting him again. Haku could only smile at Zabuza. The man always did enjoy a good fight. Especially with those that could really push him to his limit. However, their conversation was interrupted when the two heard the door creak open, exposing a short gray-haired man with a mustache and sunglasses, wearing a business suit. Two individuals with swords on either side of him. One was a shorter man, with bluish-white hair and a large overcoat. Two red lines tattooed under his eyes. The second figure was a taller, slightly more aged-looking man with an eye patch over his right eye with dull brown hair tied up into 3 top knots. Large tribal-style tattoos adorning his left chest, shoulder and arm. These two were exiled samurai from the Land of Iron, now acting as the corrupt businessman's bodyguards. You have some nerve showing your face around here after that failure of yours against those pathetic Konoha shinobi. Gato stated, clearly displeased with the results. It would appear that Kurigakure shinobi are overrated. This earned a small chuckle from the Mon's 2 bodyguards. I'll get them next time. Zabuza merely shrugged as best he could. His body still feeling the effects of being in a death-like trance. Just keep my pay coming. You have one more chance, Zabuza. Gato sneered. You fail me again, and I will have these two cut off your arms and legs, leaving you alive to watch the rest of my men have fun with your little tool here. Both ex-samurai grinned at the concept. Eager to spill blood. To ensure he had the last word in the matter and to leave his threat standing, Gato departed the room, with the 2 bodyguards in tow behind him. Both Zabuza and Haku however only glare at the trio as they departed. Haku was shaking in anger, and a bit of fear at the threat, whilst Zabuza's blood was boiling. He desperately wanted to cut that pathetic Mon's head off and shove it in an undisclosed location on the Mon's body. I really hate that man. Zabuza commented, earning a nod from Haku. Konohakagure, night time. It had been a massively boring day for the beautiful Anbu known as Neko. The only interesting part of her day was when the Hokage's grandson burst into the room, attempting to kill the old man in the child's bid for becoming Hokage, only to trip on his own scarf and face plant into the floor. It was cute the first few times, though after the 438th attempt, it was starting to get annoying. Making her way towards the dango shop to meet up with the rest of the girls, the purple-haired woman couldn't help but wonder how her mate was doing on his first mission outside of the village. She couldn't help but feel a little giddy at the prospect of being able to be openly affectionate to the blonde Hanyu after he returned and talked with the Hokage. And she fully intended to keep her word of dry humping her lover in front of Hayate. Smirking at the thought, she continued on her way towards her destination. Arriving there after a few minutes. As she approached, she could make out Kurenai and Anko talking about something, while Hinata sat in between them, eating a stick of dango, and to her surprise, drinking some sake. Anko, would you stop corrupting my student? Kurenai stated in an exasperated tone. She's already dressing like you, I don't need her having your drinking habits too. Anko could only laugh in response at how overprotective her friend was being over her student. Even the Hyuga heiress herself was chuckling at her sensei's antics. Yugao could see the dark-haired girl's cheeks were already a touch flushed, indicating that the Hyuga heiress was already a little tipsy from her consumption of the alcoholic beverage. Ladies, Yugao greeted as she entered the establishment, taking a seat next to Anko. Giving the snake mistress a one-armed hug. So, anything interesting happening in the old goat's office? Anko asked in a teasing tone. Anko, show some respect for the Hokage. Kurenai chastised, and cast Hinata a sharp glare as the heiress stifled a giggle. Oh, there was another attempt on his life. The purple-haired woman casually commented. Bringing the total tally to 438. Kid's determined, gotta give him that. The snake mistress replied, as they all knew who it was. When is that kid ever going to learn that there is no shortcut to being the Hokage? Kurenai asked, while shaking her head. Who knows? Yugao shrugged. Naruto-kun even gave him a small lecture about it, but looks like it went through one ear and out the other. Naruto-kun. The ruby-eyed genjutsu mistress mentally questioned herself, as she never recalled the Anbu woman to ever refer to Naruto in such a way. Doesn't help, given who the kid's private tutor is. Anko replied. Wouldn't put it past the closet pervert to tell Konohamaru to just ignore what Naruto-kun told him. Anything else interesting happen? Hinata asked with a slight slur to her speech, taking another sip from her sake bottle. Well, since Naruto-kun advised Hokage-sama to use shadow clones to get the paperwork done faster, the old man has been binge reading his Ika Ika Paradise books. The purple-haired beauty sighed in annoyance. Seriously? Anko asked. What the hell do people see in those books anyways? It's just smut. No story, no character development, no plot. Just sluts with big tits that jump on the main characters on every page. Anko. Language. Kurenai chastised, though the snake mistress just waved her off. Personally, I am glad Naruto-kun gave me a copy of Demon Heart. Yugao smiled, as she produced said book from her pouch. Much better story and characters, and the love feels more grounded and real. Not driven by lust. I agree, much more well written. The snake mistress smiled, producing her own copy and hugging it. Can't wait for the third book to come out. What's it about? The ruby-eyed mistress asked, a little interested into why her friends and by the looks of it, her student, were so interested in this book series. You haven't read it yet, Nai-chan? Anko inquired. No. Kurenai shook her head. Every time I go to the bookstore, they are sold out. Here, Yugao stated as she handed her friend her copy of the book. You can borrow mine. I've already read it at least 20 times. Are you sure? Kurenai asked as she took the book. Looking it over. The cover featured a fantasy setting with a knight standing on a battlefield littered with various broken weapons, shields, and bodies. While she appreciated the effort put into the art, it was the tagline that caught her attention. A world divided, but can a forsaken love unite the broken world? Interesting. The genjutsu mistress thought to herself as she flipped the book over to read the summary on the back. She was beginning to see just why this book series was so popular with the women in the village. Just make sure I get it back, okay? Yugao smiled as she saw her friend becoming absorbed with the book before being shaken out of her daze. Of course. Kurenai returned the smile. Thank you. I miss Naruto-kun, Hinata said out of nowhere, as all the talk of the blonde was beginning to make he depressed of him not being around. Ah, it's okay, Hinata-chan. Anko comforted her by wrapping her arms around her shoulders. He'll be back before you know it. And then we can have some real fun with him. Hinata could only giggle, catching the snake mistress's innuendo. This of course didn't get lost on Kurenai, who only glared at her friend and student before shaking her head. Come on, Hinata. I need you sober tomorrow. The genjutsu mistress stated as she began to guide the young Hyuga heiress out of her seat. I'll let you sleep at my house, because there is no way in hell I am explaining to your father why you are drunk. You worry too much, Kurenai-sensei. Hinata giggled in her slurred voice. I'll catch you girls tomorrow. Kurenai bid her farewell to Anko and Yugao before guiding a stumbling Hinata to the streets. She grows up so fast. Anko grinned, while Yugao only shook her head while chuckling. You know Kurenai is going to tear into forgetting her prized student drunk, right? Anko only shrugged. She wasn't too worried about her friend's reaction. Yugao-chan, what a pleasant surprise to see you here. Came a voice from behind the two, accompanied with some coughs. Earning a scowl from the two women. You know I always come here after my shift, Hayate Tem. Yugao stated, clearly upset at the new arrival. Hayate merely shrugged off her insult towards him, and pulled up a chair next to her, much to her annoyance. So, meet your supposed fiancé yet? He asked in a smug tone, believing that the man would never show up. As a matter of fact, I have. Yugao smiled. And I must say, I am vastly pleased with the arrangement. This only caused the coughing man to scowl. Something that did not go unnoticed by the two women, whom only smirked at his reaction. And just where is he? Hayate asked. If you must know, he is on a mission the Hokage sent him on. Yugao replied. So he is a shinobi then. He stated. Always that chance that he may never make it home. That is highly unlikely as he is rather skilled. The purple-haired Anbu praised her mate. I have had the honor of sparring with him multiple times, and he has always been able to come out on top. In more ways than one. Yugao couldn't help but smirk as her innuendo had hit Hayate with full force, causing jealousy to rise up within the man who just couldn't take the hint that the purple-haired Anbu just wasn't interested in him. He scowled as he spied Anko behind her, covering her mouth as she laughed. Perhaps, but even the mightiest of shinobi have fallen. He responded, though his voice dripped with jealousy. Should that day ever come, Hayate tem. Yugao narrowed her eyes towards the man, causing him to flinch slightly. I would sooner date Anko-chan here, than you. Ah, I knew you loved me, babe. The snake mistress grinned, playfully wrapping her arms around the purple-haired woman, causing said woman to chuckle and lean into her hold just to push it further. This only caused the scowl on Hayate's face to deepen before he aggressively got up from his seat and left the stand, feeling humiliated once again by the object of his desire. Of course, his quick departure only caused the two women to laugh even harder. After a few minutes, their laughter finally died down, with Anko turning to her future sister wife. So, how do you think he will take it when he finds out it's Naruto-kun? The snake mistress arched an eyebrow. Fairly certain he is going to have a severe meltdown, followed by an entire one-sided argument about how he is more of a man than our lovely Naruto is, and probably swear some sort of revenge later. Yugao predicted, earning a chuckle from her friend and future sister wife. Should be an entertaining show. Anko replied with a chuckle. Very entertaining. With Kurenai and Hinata. As the two walked, the Hyuga heiress continued to lean on her sensei for support as they made their way to her small apartment. Kurenai was thinking of all kinds of ways to tear into Anko for influencing her student to drink. Though on the other side of her thoughts, it was somewhat of a relief to see the girl be more open and confident. Arriving to her two-bedroom apartment, the genjutsu mistress guided her student to the spare bedroom and laid her down on the bed, ensuring she was comfortable, only to be grabbed and pulled into a firm hug by the still tipsy girl, whom was also trying to kiss her, before realizing who she was with and blushed in embarrassment. Sorry Kurenai-sensei. Hinata yawned. I am used to hugging and kissing Naruto-kun goodnight when I stayed over at Anko-chan's. Hinata. Kurenai sighed, debating if she really wanted to approach this subject with the girl. You do know that Naruto and Anko are dating, right? Hinata only nodded in response. I know you've had a crush on Naruto for a long time. Kurenai approached the subject as gently as she could. But maybe you should start looking for other boys your age who are still single. Hinata shook her head. It's okay. Anko-chan said we could share Naruto-kun. The Hyuga heiress smiled fondly. And I have already slept with Naruto-kun. Kurenai couldn't stop her mouth from dropping open. However, to her horror, her student continued. He was so gentle and loving. Hinata blushed with bliss-filled eyes. And so big. So big. Oh okay, I will see you tomorrow morning then. The genjutsu mistress stated before hurrying out of the room. Not sure what to make of what her student had just said. She must have been talking about a dream. She tried to convince herself. Yeah, that's it. She is just remembering a dream she had. It was flimsy and illogical, but the ruby-eyed woman didn't want to think of the alternative. Grabbing her favorite bottle of wine and a wine glass, she stared at the glass for a moment before setting it back down and retiring to her bedroom with the wine bottle, deciding she would have a talk with Anko about this later and get all the facts. Nami no Kuni, night time. It was late by the time Naruto returned to the house. Partially because he wanted to make sure the home was secure, and mostly because he wanted to get a feel for the task at hand. Every time Gato's name was brought up, he felt a tingling in the back of his mind. He knew what it meant. Jashin-chan wanted his soul, and Naruto was more than willing to fulfill her will. With that in mind, he looked for any information he could scour about the greedy man. Unfortunately for the blonde Hanyu, he couldn't get any solid leads on where the man was hiding. Though he did learn that Gato had a small military force of bandits that numbered close to 300. Not to mention he always had two rogue samurai around him at all times acting as bodyguards. As quietly as he could, he opened the kitchen door to enter the home. He was half expecting Kakashi to be sitting there waiting for him, or maybe Sakura. He was not, however, expecting the bridge builder's daughter sitting at the table with 2 cups of tea ready. "Welcome back, Naruto." She smiled as she offered him one of the cups, which he gladly received, sitting down at the table with her. "Was your outing productive? I was able to get a better idea of what we are up against," he responded truthfully, as he looked her over, causing her to blush a little, though she didn't mind as she thought he was rather handsome. His eyes then wandered down to her arm where the bandage was still firmly wrapped around her forearm. "Is your arm okay?" he asked. "If you need, I know a moderate amount of medical ninjutsu that can accelerate the healing process. If you wouldn't mind." She smiled as she undid the bandage, exposing a mostly healed cut. Though from what Naruto could see, it looked to have been a rather deep cut. Placing his hand over the cut, his free hand gently holding her hand, a faint green glow began to emit from his hand, coating the wound as he did so. Slowly, what was left of the wound began to close up and heal faster until nothing was left except smooth skin. "If you don't mind me asking, how did you receive such a cut?" Deciding this would probably be her only chance, since everyone else was asleep. Not to mention, this was the reason she had stayed up to await the blonde shinobi. "Can I show you something?" she asked as she got up from the table. "I am sure it is something you would be interested to see." Naruto could only arc an eyebrow, while Ari was blushing madly at the woman's bold move. "It's nothing like that, I promise." She smiled, well aware of how her words sounded. "Although, you are cute. Maybe later." "Oh my, she is a bold one, Naruto-kun." Ari giggled from his mindscape. Standing up, he followed Tsunami as she led him to the basement and down the stairs until she stopped at a lone door at the bottom of the steps. Pulling out a key, she unlocked it and opened the door. Exposing her hidden altar, she prayed to. Immediately, Naruto recognized it and couldn't help but to smile. "I prayed to Jashin-sama 2 weeks ago to aid us in our time of need," Tsunami explained. "She told me that soon, we would be sheltered by the shadow of the fox. And here you are. What makes you think I am the one that Jashin-chan sent?" Naruto smiled as he looked at the dark blue-haired woman. "Jashin-chan, huh?" Tsunami smirked, slowly approaching the blonde Hanyu. Once within arm's reach, she reached out and traced her fingers around some of the threads on the front of his jacket, smiling as she gazed into his cerulean blue eyes. "Aside that you just gave it away. The name you have on the back of your coat, Shadow Fox, is a pretty big giveaway." "I suppose it does." Naruto chuckled. "Would it be too bold of me to kiss you, Naruto-kun?" She smiled, leaning in slightly. "I wouldn't be opposed to receiving a kiss from a beautiful woman, such as yourself." The blonde gave a fox-like grin. "Just so you know, you would have to share, since I have 3 girls back home." Tsunami's only response was to lean in further until she was merely millimeters away from his lips, still gazing into his eyes. "I don't mind," she whispered as she closed her eyes and instigated the kiss. Naruto soon followed suit, closing his eyes as he allowed her tongue into his mouth to begin fighting for dominance with his own. Out of instinct, he held her closer as the kiss deepened between the two, not that she minded. It had been far too long since she had been held by a strong and caring man. After a few minutes, the two broke the kiss with a string of saliva hanging between them. Tsunami couldn't help but blush as Naruto smiled to the young woman. "Are you sure about this, Tsunami-chan?" the blonde Hanyu asked, getting a nod in confirmation. "If you are sure about this, then let us take it slow and get to know each other better." "I would like that very much," Naruto-kun. She smiled, giving another light kiss to the blonde Hanyu. Looks like you got another one, Naruto-kun. Ari teased from the back of his mind. What can I say, the ladies just love me. The blonde Hanyu mentally responded, eliciting a small chuckle from the kitsune girl. Before the two headed back upstairs, Tsunami made sure to lock up her altar room before joining the blonde upstairs to turn in for the night. Pleasant thoughts on the young woman's mind about the blonde in front of her. A perverted smile creeping onto her face as her mind gave her other images of the blonde shinobi. Thank you Jashin-sama for sending him here, she thought. The next morning, the smell of delicious food and laughter greeted the rest of Team 7 as they filed down the stairs and into the kitchen area, to find Naruto and Tsunami chuckling amongst each other as the blonde had shared a story of one of his past pranks he had pulled on some of the Anbu, minus his Yugao-chan. Dyeing their uniforms a vibrant pink and layering it with a seal that should they try and use a henge to hide the color, it would henge them into a random female appearance. The first thing the pink had noticed was that the two sat rather close to each other, despite there being plenty of room at the table. This caused a small hint of jealousy to flare up from within her, even if she didn't want to admit it. Her inner self, on the other hand, was laughing up a storm, having sensed her outer self's reaction to the scene before them. Morning Sakura-san, Naruto greeted, purposely ignoring the other two as he took a sip of his coffee. You're up. Breakfast is ready. Tsunami beamed. Help yourself. Thank you, Tsunami-san. Sakura said before helping herself to a modest portion of eggs, bacon, and toast. Kakashi also gave his thanks, while Sasuke only grunted, prompting Naruto to whisper something into the woman's ear, causing her to giggle. Earning a glare from the emo, and for the masked Jonin to narrow his eyes at the blonde. Sakura, surprisingly, found that she didn't care. Despite knowing that whatever her blonde teammate had said was about Sasuke, she just didn't have the urge to defend the raven-haired boy. After her short talk with Naruto the previous day, she really began to analyze her feelings towards the last Uchiha and how he himself acted towards everyone around him. Looking back through her memories, thankful that she had a photographic memory, she had come to the conclusion that her blonde teammate was correct. It had hurt her to admit it to herself, but the last Uchiha only cared about himself, power, and what those around him could give him. She had also began to recall anomalies that occurred during their years in the academy. She could recall one particular moment that stood out. A civilian boy by the name of Jubei had actually outperformed the last Uchiha in a ninjutsu demonstration by performing an impressive technique that even left the teachers' mouths on the floor. However, the next day, Jubei was absent and Sasuke used the technique he had. Sometime later, she had ran into her former classmate, and being her fangirl self at the time, had bragged about her, Sasuke-kun, being able to perform the same jutsu even better than he had. However, the words he spoke still hung over her head, now with even greater weight as she was beginning to learn just what type of person her precious, Sasuke-kun, was. Of course he performed it. Jubei spat with venom. That bastard dragged me before the civilian council and forced me to hand over all of my jutsus before they sealed my chakra and banished me from being a shinobi. Sakura frowned at the memory. She never saw the boy after that day. This of course didn't go unnoticed by her blonde teammate. You okay, Sakura-san? Yeah, she sighed, shaking away her memories. Just thinking. Naruto merely nodded, not wanting to push for anything. He figured that if she really needed to, she would talk to him later about it. Though he did notice a stark difference in her attitude towards their raven-haired teammate. So far, she had refrained from attempting to sit close to Sasuke, like she normally would. In fact, the blonde noticed that she hadn't said a single word to him the entire morning. In a word, he was proud of his pink-haired teammate. It seemed that she had finally broken out of her fangirl ways completely. Once you finish breakfast, meet me out back in the forest. Kakashi instructed before he left the table. The man had cleared his plate without any of his genin noticing, prompting a series of arched eyebrows wondering if he had ate through the mask. A short while later, all three of the genin were gathered around their masked sensei, whom was standing near one of the many trees. As expected, the silver-haired Jonin had his nose in his orange book once more. So what are we going to be training with today, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Sakura, sounding a bit more excited than she normally would have at the prospect of training. Tree climbing, the masked Jonin stated with an eye smile. Both Sakura and Naruto frowned at this, knowing full well what exercise their sensei was talking about. Sasuke on the other hand began to rant that climbing trees was a waste of time, demanding to know how climbing a tree would help him get stronger to fight Zabuza. While I could think of countless other exercises to help better prepare ourselves for the coming fight, though Duck SS is a complete idiot to think that tree walking is a waste of time since it helps with chakra control and helps expand your own reserves. Naruto thought to himself. Can you do it without your hands, Sasuke? Kakashi asked, prompting the raven-haired emo to shut up and look at the masked man in question. As if to prove his point, the man turned and began to walk up straight up the tree as if he were on a leisurely stroll, much to the last Uchiha's shock. Sakura and Naruto, however, were unfazed as both had mastered it already. Once the masked man had finished his walk, now standing upside down on one of the thicker branches, he reached into his pouch and tossed 3 kunai at the ground in front of his genin. Use these to mark your progress, the man instructed, jumping down from the tree to stand in front of them once more. Once in front of them, he began a lazy explanation of how to perform the tree walking exercise. Though, due to his laziness, he had left out a few small details. For a moment, Sakura and Naruto debated if they should fill in the missing information, but both decided against it. Since they knew that the Uchiha would no doubt get pulled to the side for more personal training with the masked Jonin. Sasuke, grab your kunai and follow me. I have something I want you to work on as well as tree walking. Kakashi said, after he had finished his lazy explanation before turning to his remaining two. You two stay here and work on your tree walking until you have perfected it. Which, knowing Naruto is going to take all day, if not longer. Not leaving room for the blonde in question to talk back, the silver-haired Jonin quickly led the last Uchiha deeper into the forest. Did he forget that you were fighting Zabuza on the water? Sakura asked, after the two had disappeared into the trees. Not to mention we have an A-ranked missing nin, who is also one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, after our client and his wonderful idea is to have you and I do tree walking while he pampers the Uchiha. Naruto sighed, clearly disappointed with his supposed sensei. Without a doubt, if he hadn't already learned from Ari-chan, Anko-chan, Jashin-chan, and Yugao-chan, he would be screwed at this point. Either way, I have an idea on what you can do. First, let's make some shadow clones to do the tree walking exercise and instruct them to pretend to struggle with it. In case Tada-sensei decides to check on us. The blonde instructed. Without question, Sakura created her shadow clone and did as instructed before turning to her blonde teammate, awaiting to see what he had planned. Alright, while our clones are doing this, we are going to go further down the shoreline to avoid Tada-sensei from spying on us. There, we are going to determine what your elements are and go from there. Naruto explained, earning a nod and a look of anticipation from the Pinkett. With that said, the two departed down the shoreline. After a good half-hour of walking, they reached an open beach area, with sheer cliff faces behind them, giving them perfect cover from any would-be spectators. Perfect in case a certain silver-haired shinobi stumbled near their location. You know, this is almost like a date. Inner Sakura gushed. Just the two of you, alone on a private beach. Just imagine him suddenly turning around and kissing you, dominating your mouth with his tongue as you feel up those muscles he has. Sweet Kami, inner. Sakura blushed heavily at the onslaught of descriptions her inner self had provided. We are here to train, not ravage or be ravaged by Naruto-kun. It's Naruto-kun now, is it? Inner teased, prompting her outer self to blush once more. Single quote, comma, dot, single quote. Don't be like that, outer-chan, it's good you're being honest with yourself. Sakura-san, are you okay? Naruto asked, snapping the pinkett out of her thoughts. You kind of spaced out there. Yeah, sorry. She apologized, clearly embarrassed. As if the blonde in front of her could hear her inner dialogue. It's okay. He gave her a fox-like grin. You can fantasize about me later. Let's get started. Immediately, Sakura went red from a deep blush that invaded her face. All the while her inner self was teasing her and threatening to unleash more details of what the two of them could do alone. If Naruto noticed, he said nothing as he rummaged through his trench coat and produced what appeared to be a square piece of blank paper. Here we go, he said as he handed a piece to the pinkett. This is chakra paper, this will help us determine what your elements are. All you have to do is set it on the ground and channel some chakra into it. How will we know what my elements are? She asked as she looked over the piece of paper. Well, it's simple, he explained. If you have a fire element, the paper will catch on fire and turn to ash. Wind, it will cut in half and in some cases become shredded. Lightning will cause the paper to wrinkle. Earth, the paper will turn to dirt and crumble away. And finally water will make the paper become damp. Sakura nodded in understand and set out to do as she was instructed. Not missing the irony that once again, she was learning more from Naruto than their own sensei. Setting the paper down, she channeled her chakra into it only for the paper to split itself in half. One half turned to dirt and crumpled away, while the other half became very damp. Alright, you have earth and water. Perfect for you really. Naruto smiled. You have the perfect defense with earth, and a powerful offense with water. Sakura actually wasn't too surprised. It actually felt like a perfect fit. Now, let's see here. Where did I put them? The blonde murmured to himself as he rummaged through his coat once more before producing 2 sealing scrolls. Here we go. Without explaining what he was doing, he opened both scrolls and applied a little chakra to each, prompting a few scrolls to poof into existence. Clearly labeled Earth and Water. Unfortunately, I can't help you with these, since I don't have a strong affinity towards them. The blonde frowned. But these scrolls should help you greatly. Thank you, Naruto-ku. She stopped herself before she finished. What elements do you have? Naruto arched an eyebrow at the sudden shift in behavior, but shrugged it off. I have wind, lightning, and darkness. He shrugged. With a little bit of fire. You have 4. It's complex, but yes. He sighed. Wind and lightning are my main ones. The darkness comes from my bloodline. And the fire, well, that's a bit more difficult to explain as it is an S-ranked secret in the village. Sakura frowned slightly as she pondered what Naruto could be involved in that required such a high-ranking secret to be placed around him. However, as curious as she was, she didn't push. She knew full well that divulging such a secret could sentence her to death, or worst-case scenario, both of them. Maybe later I will tell you about it. He frowned. For now, let's start training. I want you to create a second shadow clone and have it do water walking while you study those scrolls. The pinkett nodded and set to work doing as he instructed. 6 hours later, it was around 2 p.m. before Naruto and Sakura returned to the house. The pinkett looking a bit worse for wear than normal as she had decided to spar with the blonde to get a better grip of some of her new jutsus. In which, Naruto had praised her for grasping them so quickly to be able to use them effectively in combat. Once they had finished their spar, Naruto had given his pink-haired teammate a solider pill to quickly replenish her chakra and strength. Which was the only reason she was able to stand on her own as the two entered the house, casually dismissing both of their shadow clones, receiving the memories of each clone. It seemed that their supposed sensei never once came to check on them. Welcome back. Tsunami smiled as she greeted the two. I just finished making lunch. Thank you, Tsunami-chan, it smells wonderful. Naruto smiled, causing the woman to blush lightly at the compliment. Did you finish the tree walking exercise, Naruto? came a voice from behind the two. Naruto turned his head enough to see Kakashi coming through the door with the raven-haired emo trailing behind him. Course we finished it. It was pretty easy actually. The blonde smirked. Kakashi only frowned in response. He could argue that the blonde was lying, though from the look of Sakura next to him, they had been training, so it was very possible that he had finished the exercise, as unlikely as it was. Then again, he acted nothing like his academy profile suggested. He really needed to get a more up-to-date and accurate profile reading on the blonde. Oi, Dobi. Sasuke broke Kakashi out of his musings. Teach me all your techniques. Naruto only arched an eyebrow at the duck-ass's demand, as Tsunami only glared at the raven-haired emo. Meanwhile, Sakura was getting all too familiar flashbacks of her former classmate. At least now, since the blonde was recognized as a shinobi of Konoha, the civilian council had no power over him. Strangely enough, this gave the Pinkett a sense of relief. No, Naruto simply replied. Dobi, I demand that you give me those techniques. Sasuke stated as he stomped towards the blonde, somewhat reminding Tsunami of a toddler throwing a tantrum. So I can avenge my clan. You're not strong enough. The blonde simply replied before his attention back to the kitchen, intent on getting something to eat. Ma, you should help your teammates. Kakashi offered as he dismissively waved his hand, earning a slight glare from his pink-haired student. Slowly, Naruto turned to face his supposed sensei. Tell me, Tada-sensei. The blonde began. Would you be so helpful if Sakura-san or myself wanted to learn one of his techniques? Those are clan techniques, Naruto. The masked Jonin gave a lazy smile. Besides, you don't have the elemental affinity for it. First off, Kaden jutsus are not a Uchiha clan technique. Naruto pointed out, earning a scowl from the silver-haired Jonin. Secondly, you don't even know what my affinities are. And lastly, your precious Uchiha can't learn my abilities anyways because they are from my bloodline, so even his precious Sharingan will never be able to copy them. Sasuke only scowled at the blonde before turning and stomping out of the house, once again reminding the dark blue-net woman of a toddler throwing a fit when he couldn't get what he wanted. Kakashi similarly looked upset, but at least composed himself far better. Ignoring his sensei, Naruto dished himself a bowl of the stew Tsunami had prepared, and handed it to Sakura before dishing one for Tsunami and finally himself. Both women gave their thanks as they took their seats around the table. Though it didn't go unnoticed that both girls had taken seats on either side of him. This is really good, Tsunami-chan. Naruto complimented. You'll make some lucky man very happy one day. The blonde gave her a subtle wink, causing her to blush a bit more. I can only hope I meet the one soon. She coyly replied. Who knows, maybe I already have. Meanwhile, Sakura frowned at the interaction between the two. She could tell that Tsunami was flirting with her blonde teammate, which caused a sense of jealousy to flare up within her. As much as she wanted to lash out at the blonde, she couldn't fault him for being polite to the woman. Do you have anything else for us to train, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura decided to ask. Even though she already suspected that the silver-haired Jonin had nothing for her or Naruto to continue to work on. Though he didn't show it, the blonde Hanyu was also interested if the masked Jonin had thought past the basic tree-walking exercise. To be honest, Sakura. The man began. I didn't expect Naruto to be able to complete the tree-walking exercise so quickly. So I have nothing for you at this moment. What the hell, Tada-sensei? Sakura snapped, catching everyone at the table by surprise. Even Naruto. Naruto-kun fought Zabuza on the water when he saved your SS, and you didn't think he could do tree walking. Pushing up roughly from the table, the cherry blossom stomped up the stairs and slammed the door to the room she was residing in, leaving a shocked Tsunami, a speechless Naruto and an abashed Kakashi. An awkward silence filled the air as they finished up their lunch. Naruto-kun, would you like to accompany to the village so that I may pick up some things for tonight's dinner? Tsunami asked, giving the blonde a subtle wink. I would love to, Tsunami-chan. The blonde smiled. Why don't you take Sasuke or Sakura instead, or even myself, Tsunami-san? Kakashi inquired, causing the woman in question to narrow her eyes slightly at the masked man. It's simple, Kakashi-san. She replied, your student Sasuke is nowhere to be found. Not good, considering part of the job is to not only watch over my father, but also his family. His current actions is not setting a good example for your village's shinobi. This caused the masked Jonin to frown, though he could not deny her claim. As for Sakura, she seems to be rather upset and needs some time alone. She continued, though she had nothing against the pink-haired girl. If she wasn't already planning on using this trip as an impromptu date with Naruto, she would have happily brought the cherry blossom along. And as for you, I would not trust myself alone with a pervert, since all you do is read those smut books. Tsunami finished, prompting the masked Jonin to flinch when she called him a pervert. Just give me a moment to let Sakura-san know. I fear she may worry. The blonde said, earning a smile from the dark blue-haired woman. Kakashi wisely kept silent as he was still stunned by Sakura's outburst and the revelation that the client's daughter didn't trust him or Sasuke. Naruto had quickly departed up the stairs and knocked on the door of the room that his pink-haired teammate was staying in. Hearing a soft reply, he slowly opened the door and peeked in to see Sakura sitting on the futon, reading a copy of his first book. So, it's Naruto-kun now? He teased, eliciting a blush from her. No, I was just, she stammered, a little embarrassed. It's okay. I don't mind. Naruto smiled, putting her at ease. If you want to call me Naruto-kun, go ahead. Okay, Sakura-chan. Hearing the chan suffix at the end of her name caused her heart to flutter slightly. Not trusting her voice, she only nodded. Finally, he is calling us Sakura-chan. Inner gushed in pure bliss. And here you were stressing out that you let it slip that you called him Naruto-kun. Okay, I admit it. It feels good to have someone who is cute actually acknowledge and compliment me. Only cute. Inner smirked. Fine. Drop dead handsome, happy. Sakura mentally replied. Too bad he is already with Anko. Girl, don't worry about that. I have a feeling that things will work out. So don't count him out just yet. Inner cryptically replied. Trust me on this, I have a sixth sense for these kinds of things. Good book? He asked, snapping her out of her thoughts. Yeah, though I have already read it a couple times. The pinkett replied, shaking away her thoughts. I want to get the second book, but it's always sold out. Naruto only smirked as he reached into his jacket and activated a seal, producing a copy of his second book and handed it to Sakura, whom was completely shocked that her blonde teammate had a copy of the book, let alone it being brand new. I keep a few copies on hand for friends. He merely smiled. Anko-chan loves this book series. Wait, how do you even have spare copies? She asked as she looked up from the book. Do you go and buy the books ahead of time? Nah, nothing like that. I'll give you a hint though, it's right in front of you. The blonde Hanyu smirked, waiting to see if she could figure it out. Sakura narrowed her eyes as she contemplated the hidden meaning of his words. Flipping the book over, she looked over the cover once more until her eyes landed on the author's name. Kitsune. She furrowed her brow. Initially, she didn't think anything wrong with the name of the author. However, now something seemed off about it. Briefly, she allowed her eyes to wander up to the expecting face of Naruto. Wait a second. Her eyes widened. Kitsune. Naruto Uzumaki, the Shadow Fox. You're the author. She stammered, desperately hoping she was correct in her suspicion. Correct. I can see why you earned your spot for Kunoichi of the year of our class. Able to figure it out with minimum resources to deduct from. He complimented the pinkett, earning him another blush from the girl. Though, I do ask that you keep it a secret. I promise, Naruto-kun. She replied, tasting how his name with the affectionate suffix sounded on her lips. She liked it, as it felt natural for some reason. But why hide your name? Well, I am not well liked in the village. So anything with my name on it would automatically be taboo. He replied, causing the girl to frown. It has to do with the S-ranked secret I mentioned earlier. Again, the hints are in front of you. If you figure it out, talk to me. Small loophole with the law. Anyways, I wanted to let you know that I am going with Tsunami-chan into town. He smiled. Relax and enjoy the book. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She smiled as she brought him into a hug, surprising the blonde Han-yu at the sudden show of affection. Smiling softly, he hugged her back before separating from her and leaving the room. You know you should have kissed him. Inner chastised, causing Sakura to mentally scowl. With Naruto. After leaving the house, Naruto quickly made 2 shadow clones and had them henge into himself and Tsunami, having them go into town whilst the real version went down the shoreline, expertly avoiding any detection from Kakashi or Sasuke, as Naruto had sensed the 2 chakra signatures shortly after they had departed. A quick distraction had left the 2 unaware of the switch. I am beginning to wonder which one of you is the higher-ranked shinobi on the team. Tsunami chuckled as the 2 continued their private trek down the shoreline. Officially, Kakashi is. The blonde snickered. Skill-wise, I am unsure. I am positive like me, Kakashi is hiding most of his true skill. Very modest of you, Naruto-kun. Well, I don't want to have an inflated ego like Duck SS. Naruto replied, earning another chuckle from his date at his nickname for the last Uchiha. Besides, overconfidence is the #1 cause of death for a shinobi. As they continued to walk, the sound of running water could be heard from a short distance away. Rounding the corner, the 2 saw a beautiful waterfall that just barely hid a cave behind it. A pathway along the edge, just large enough to allow them through without soaking them with water. Smiling, Naruto led Tsunami along the path until they reached the cave. It's beautiful. Tsunami breathed as she looked around the interior. Tsunami-chan, I feel that if you really want to pursue anything with me, you should know everything about me. The blonde Hanyu stated, suddenly turning serious, prompting the woman to become worried. Even if it may change how you feel about me. Naruto-kun, there is nothing you can say that will change how I feel about you. She reassured him, placing her hand on his shoulder. Nodding, Naruto took a deep breath before telling her everything about him. From the attacks he suffered in the village, to the fateful night he met Jashin-chan and was turned into a Hanyu, his mission for the goddess, his status as a Jinchuriki, the process of marking his mates, and about his other girls at home. Through it all, she sat and listened until he was finished. It was a tense few moments as Naruto awaited her verdict. To his surprise, she started laughing. Naruto-kun, do you really think I would change my feelings for you because of this? She asked, though didn't wait for an answer. If anything, they have only grown. You are a strong man, both physically and mentally, to endure what you have and still show compassion and kindness to others. And if you would have me, I would love to be one of your mates. She finished with a smile. I would be honored, if you were to be one of my mates. He smiled, tears of happiness in his eyes. Are you sure about this? Once you accept my mark, you will become a Hanyu as well. Receiving one last nod in confirmation, the blonde Hanyu leaned in and bit down on her neck, causing her to gasp out in a mixture of pain and pleasure. As she felt the chakra course through her veins, she instinctively bit down on his neck. Sealing the deal, so to speak, and officially become one of his mates as his mark took its place at the base of her neck. As she did so, she felt a power surge through her that she had never felt before. Feeling as if she could take out all of the mercenaries that Gato had in his private little army. Enamored with the feeling rushing through her body, she brought her blonde mate in for a deep kiss. The blonde Hanyu didn't resist as he held her close and allowed her tongue to enter his mouth to battle with his own for dominance. After a few moments, the two broke. Both panting and almost out of breath from the kiss they had shared, though they still bathed in each other's presence as they held each other close. Welcome to the family, Tsunami-chan. Naruto smiled. Tsunami's response was to snuggle closer to him and bury her face into the crook of his neck, letting out a sigh of contentment. A few hours later, after a solid 2 hours, the two newly mated lovers made their way back home, meeting up with Naruto's clones to retrieve what they had picked up to add to that night's dinner. To the two's amusement, both Kakashi and Sasuke had given up on tailing the two since it ended up being just the two shopping. Much to their disappointment. If only they knew. During their time out, Naruto had learned a lot about Tsunami. The blue net had opened up to him in a wide variety of areas. From her first introduction to Jushinism, to her first husband and Inari's father, whom was also a Jushinist. Until the man began to fall for the lies that the cult had begun to spread. The memory itself brought a sad frown to Tsunami's face as she recalled when he had come home one day excited and had explained his plans to take her and their son to the gathering of other cultists whom were planning on slaughtering a small village, in the name of Jashin. Appalled by this, Tsunami had tried to talk him out of it, citing that slaughtering innocents was not the will of Jashin. Though he wouldn't listen. In the end, she had been forced to kill her own husband to protect her faith in her son, eventually lying to her father, stating that her husband was killed by bandits. She had also told him about Kaiza. How he had come into Inari's life as a father figure, even though Tsunami had kept him at arm's length. Mostly due to the man being a devout worshipper of Kami. That would have been fine for the blue net, if he didn't constantly spout of how they should round up every Jushinist and kill them in the name of Kami to cleanse the world. Those words had killed any potential romance between the two, even more so when she had put her foot down that he was not allowed to talk about religion in any capacity with her son. Thank you for accompanying me, Naruto-kun. Tsunami smiled as they entered the home. It was no problem, Tsunami-chan. The blonde smiled as he helped her unpack the groceries his clones had purchased. As the two conversed, the rest of the occupants minus Sakura turned their attention to the two. Kakashi was still a little annoyed that the client's daughter didn't trust him or Sasuke. The raven-haired emo was brooding on the couch, fuming that the blonde in question was making him look bad. Tazuna on the other hand had noticed a shift in behavior from his daughter, making him suspicious of the two. Though in a good way, as he hadn't seen her this happy in years. Dinner will be ready in a short while. The blue net called out to the rest of the household. An hour and a half later found all of the household sitting at the table. Sakura had joined the two in the kitchen nearly 45 minutes ago, giving Tsunami a hand with preparing dinner as she talked with the other woman about the book Naruto had given her. Which of course, prompted the blonde Hanyu to give his new mate both copies of his current books, much to her delight. This is really good, Tsunami-san. Kakashi complimented, trying to strike up a conversation to break the awkward silence that hung over the dinner table. As much as I would like to take credit for tonight's dinner. Tsunami smiled. Both Naruto-kun and Sakura-san helped, and the recipe is from Naruto-kun. Where did you learn to cook like this, Naruto-kun? Sakura asked, impressed by the flavor of the meal. Of course this only prompted her inner self to tell her how the blonde would make a wonderful husband. Well, since it is well known we would be stuck doing D-rank missions, which are little more than glorified chores, I read up on a lot of practical skills that may be required while I was still in the academy. The blonde replied, impressing the pinkett further that he had thought that far ahead. Sasuke only grunted in response, not caring if the loser could cook or not. Though he was curious of the change in the pinkett, wondering why she began to use the kun suffix with the blonde, which was usually reserved for himself. Not that he was jealous, but he did find it odd and began to question what has transpired between the two. Meanwhile, Kakashi remained silent as he pondered a few things. Much like his favored student, he had noticed a change in his pink-haired student and her sudden closeness to her blonde teammate. Not to mention said blonde's closeness with the client's daughter. The masked Jonin could only mentally sigh. It wasn't his problem if the blonde was being unfaithful to Anko. He had warned her that she needed to increase her standards. If only the perverted Cyclops knew. Why? A voice sounded from the doorway to the dining room, turning the occupant's attention to a small boy, no older than 8. Why what? Naruto asked as he looked up from his dinner to the boy. Why are you trying so hard? The kid asked once more, a bit louder this time. You're just going to die. Gato is too powerful. PFF'd. I am a Uchiha elite and I will crush this Gato when I see him, as well as that eyebrow-less freak and his little masked pet. Sasuke arrogantly proclaimed. And I don't need any help either. Well, Kakashi has done a great job stoking his ego. Naruto thought to himself, earning an agreement from the Kitsune girl. Sakura could only frown at her raven-haired teammate's words. Now that her mind was focused and no longer obsessed with the last Uchiha, she could clearly see how the boy she had an obsessive crush on truly acted. Did I really find this attractive, inner? She mentally asked, somewhat disgusted with her past self. Unfortunately so, just be glad that Naruto-kun broke you out of that fangirl shell you were in. Sakura only mentally nodded in agreement before turning her attention towards said blonde. Gato's strength is false. Naruto stated clearly. He is a weak, pathetic man who hides behind money he stole to hire those stronger than him to do his bidding. Mark my words, he will die before we finish our mission. The rest of Team 7 awked an eye at the blonde's words. Whatever, there are no such things as heroes. The kid continued. They just get killed anyways. Oh, I am not hero, Inari-san. The blonde replied. I'm a champion. Tsunami couldn't help but smile softly at her mate's words' hidden meaning. Sighing, Naruto pushed himself up from the table and walked around where the young boy stood. Kneeling down, he placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. During their talks, Naruto had learned why her son acted in such a way and knew it was hard on the young boy. I know you have lost someone precious to you, and that you believe that things can't get any worse for you. Naruto began. Instead of looking at what you lost, look at what you still have. You have a loving mother and grandfather, whereas there are those that have none. You have a home that shelters you. If anything, I envy you. I never had any of those things while growing up. This caught Sakura's attention even more. You see, before my 6th birthday I had been attacked by the villagers more times than I care to count. Hospitalized hundreds of times. I even lost count how many times I was on the Shinigami's doorstep. All for something that was never within my control. It was during the last attempt on my life that I awakened my bloodline. I had very few precious people to look out for me. The Pinkett was shocked to hear this. Even her inner self was silent. She had known the boy had a hard childhood, as none of the villagers were ever silent of their feelings towards the boy. However, she had never thought it was this bad. A large part of her felt extremely guilty as she had been a part of those that had lashed out at him. Even if it was for an entirely different reason. However, it is for these few people that I hold dear that I continued to push on and become stronger. To make them proud. So never give up hope, Inari-san. Naruto smiled, even though his eyes reflected nothing but pain and sadness at the memories. I don't think Kaiza-san would want you to give up either. By now, Inari was sniffling, trying to hold back his tears. And it's okay to cry. The blonde continued. Showing emotions doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Inari only nodded in response before slowly moving away and departing up the stairs to his bedroom. No doubt the blonde Hanyu had given the young child much to think and reflect upon. As Naruto stood up, he was engulfed in a hug by the boy's mother, who had tears steaming down her eyes. Both from sorrow and happiness. Happiness for her mate being able to snap her son out of his funk. Sorrow, for having to reimagine the suffer her lover had gone through years before. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she whispered, though loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, before breaking the hug. Are you okay? Naruto only smiled and brought his hand up to wipe away the woman's tears, to which the brunette unconsciously leaned into the support. I'll be fine, he reassured her. I am just going to go for a walk. Moving past the dark blue-haired woman, He gave Sakura a reassuring pat on the shoulder as if to say he didn't blame her for anything before departing out the door into the night. Leaving behind two emotional women, a contemplative bridge builder, a scoffing emo and a frowning jonin. Loser probably made it all up to get sympathy. Sasuke commented finally, earning a glare from both Sakura and Tsunami. No Sasuke. Naruto has had a hard childhood. Kakashi sighed, though he may have over-exaggerated how bad it was for the sake of the kid. This only prompted Sakura to roll her eyes at the silver-haired jonin. It seemed he didn't want to believe anything when it came to her blonde teammate. Meanwhile, Inner was ranting about how the masked pervert simply dismissed Naruto's tragic past. Tsunami, though, wasn't as quiet. Then you do not know your student, Shinobi-san. She leveled her gaze at the man, causing him to shrink slightly. There was pain and sadness in those eyes. If anything, we got the sugar-coated version of what Naruto-kun has been through. Kakashi only frowned, but said nothing further. A tiny voice in the back of his mind was warning him that if he tried to dismiss the woman's words, she would make him hurt in ways he never thought possible. Sakura, on the other hand, was worried for the blonde. While she knew he could more than handle himself in the face of danger, she was deeply worried about his emotional state. She had debated with herself if she should follow him and offer him some sort of comfort and maybe apology for her actions in the past. However, her logical side won out in this instance. She knew that if the blonde didn't want to be found, then she wouldn't find him and probably only put herself at risk. One by one, each person excused themselves from the table, until only the pinkett remained. Still contemplating what she had learned about her blonde teammate. She was still wrapping her mind around just how bad the boy had it growing up. However, her mind clicked onto something he mentioned earlier. And the fire, well, that's a bit more difficult to explain as it is an S-ranked secret in the village. She recalled him saying when asked about his elemental affinities. She narrowed her eyes in thought, as she began recalling all her recent conversations with the boy. Piecing together the clues, as it were, and combining them with what he had revealed to the boy. The blonde's numerous visits to the hospital, and if it was a result of attacks from the villagers themselves, she highly doubted the staff at the hospital would have treated him any better. Probably only do just enough to avoid any official action against them. This only prompted her to frown at that notion. Her mind then went to the blonde's books, of all things. Picking up her copy that he had given to her, she gazed over the cover once more, getting a sense of déjà vu from earlier. Her eyes ghosting over the name he used once more. After a handful of seconds, it clicked in her mind. Kitsune. Kitsune means fox, she mentally exclaimed. 14 years ago, the village was attacked by the Kyuubi, a giant nine-tailed fox, and Naruto-kun is 14, which means, the fourth didn't kill it like we are told. Inner supplied. Seeing as a massive beast made of nothing but chakra can't be killed, he did the next best thing and sealed the Kyuubi into someone else. A newborn baby. Naruto-kun must have been that baby. Sakura continued. It would explain why he never had any parents, if the Kyuubi killed them, and the way the villagers treated him. Those idiots can't tell the difference between a kunai and a scroll. Inner ranted. We'll ask Naruto-kun about it tomorrow. The pinkett decided. He did say if I figured it out to talk to him about it.